The liberal advocates of responsibility to protect have advocated for military intervention in Libya, Syria, and Yemen. Sure, the reasoning might be more humanitarian than geopolitical, but the advocacy for military intervention ends up looking pretty much the same. I remember liking what candidate Obama said about military intervention, that without congressional approval, it was only justified when there was an imminent threat. After President Obama began bombing Libya, I asked him at lunch one day, what about your pledge to ask and seek congressional permission unless there was an imminent threat? He responded that there was an imminent threat to Benghazi. I looked at him incredulously and responded, really? An imminent threat to a foreign city is your justification for an unauthorized war? The responsibility to protect ideology did not learn much from the Libyan debacle and immediately pushed the Obama administration to jump into Syria. Many on the left, like Secretary Blinken, don't admit that there was too much intervention. They actually believe in Syria that they failed because there was too little military intervention. Several 100,000 people have died in Syria, and more than 1 million refugees have been displaced. If you're talking about humanitarianism, famine, the wars, really other than natural causes, war is the #1 cause of famine around the world. An argument can be made, though, that Assad would probably massacred far fewer people had the West and the Gulf states stayed out of this civil war. Are you willing to admit that the Libyan and Syrian military interventions that you advocated for were a mistake, and that going forward you will be more conscious of the unintended humanitarian disasters that seem to occur again and again with our military interventions in Africa and throughout the Middle East?
Thank you, Senator. First, if I may, just talk about USAID and its role, which I think can be very important in Libya today. I think before you arrived, I mentioned that there's a power-sharing government has finally been set up in Libya. USAID right now, because of the security conditions, operates its programs largely from—
But you'd acknowledge Libya is worse now than it was before we started bombing them.
I think it's really important with Libya having the opportunity to have elections at the end of this year for us to do what we can to support those elections. I think it's in the face of mass atrocities, there are a whole set of non-military tools that are, I would hope that you would support deploying. We had some successes with them, for example, in helping bring about the South Sudanese referendum, which was a risk of grave atrocities occurring back in the first term of the Obama administration. An attempt to steal an election in Cote d'Ivoire, where diplomatic pressure averted mass atrocities, and even sending technical advisors, military advisors to Central Africa to combat the Lord's Resistance Army, which kidnaps children. And
you think we were successful in Libya, that Libya is a better place because of our military intervention, or Syria?
The decision that President Obama made when confronted with the risk to the people of Benghazi and other civilian centers was an incredibly difficult one. And again, in sitting in the Situation Room, I think it's hard now to remember, with the United Nations, NATO, the Arab League, this body, the Senate, unanimously calling for a no-fly zone. President Obama made the judgment that the risks of allowing Benghazi to fall and the slaughter that would ensue were not—
I know it's a tough decision, but in retrospect, was Libya a good idea to military intervene in Libya? A good idea to militarily intervene in Syria in retrospect?
I think the challenge is that we don't have the counterfactual, and certainly the fallout in the wake of the intervention, the centrifugal forces have been incredibly difficult to manage, and above all, hard on the Libyan people.
But we have to learn a lesson sometime. I mean, we went into Libya, we went into Iraq, we destabilized Iraq, we're still dealing with that. We went into Libya, destabilized Libya, we're still dealing with that. Syria, the same thing, and Yemen as well. So, I mean, there should be an accumulation of knowledge and a learning curve here that our interventions make things worse, not better.
Thank you, Senator. I certainly agree that non-military tools in the toolbox carry with them far fewer risks. I oppose the war in Iraq. I agree with you on Yemen. All I'm trying to describe is that when these situations arise, it is a question almost of lesser evils, that the choices are very